Hey, what's up? Zach here, and today I've got the Asics Gel Dedicate 7. Now, if you're looking at this shoe and thinking to yourself, it looks an awful lot like another Asics shoe out there, you wouldn't be alone because these shoes look and in some ways play a lot like the Asics Gel Resolution 8. Let's cut into them and check them out. Now, right off the bat, the biggest difference between the Gel Resolution 8 and the Gel Dedicate 7 is in the price. The Gel Resolution 8 being well over $100 US typically, and the Gel Dedicate 7 being well under that $100 price point. But with those price differences come a lot of differences in the actual shoe, starting in the uppers. Now, the Gel Resolution 8, as well as the Cord FF2, is made like an armored tank with all that rubber and urethane on the top of the shoe. Now, the Gel Dedicate 7, a little different. On the uppers of this, it's more of this kind of nylon and faux leather material, much like a lot of the other shoes that we're seeing under $100 using those materials. Now, these shoes do take a little bit longer to break in because you can see the creasing in the uppers right here. They just aren't as soft and plush as some other shoes. However, in the Gel Dedicate 7, the uppers are actually a lot lighter than in the Gel Resolution 8. So you're actually getting a little bit more of a breezy and light feeling in the uppers of the shoe. And honestly, I didn't mind the uppers of the Gel Dedicate 7 versus on the Gel Resolution 8. However, on the upper durability test of the Dremel 10-second Tie Grit sandpaper, and the Gel Dedicate 7 just really doesn't hold a candle to the upper level Asics shoes like the Gel Resolution 8. You know, you're getting right through the first layer of the upper, well into the woven layer underneath of it. So if you're a slider or a dragger, these shoes just really aren't meant for you. But that Dremel test actually brings up a pretty interesting point about the Gel Dedicate 7's playability, because this shoe just isn't designed for a slider or dragger. It's designed for a pretty different player, and I'll get to that once we get into the outsole tread. But just because this shoe doesn't have a ton of durability wrapping around the uppers doesn't mean it isn't designed for a certain type of player, and doesn't mean it isn't outstanding for that type of player. The other thing I like more in the uppers, the Gel Dedicate 7 versus the Gel Resolution 8, number one, much more plush padded tongue, and because the uppers are a little bit lighter and more malleable, you can actually tie them a little bit better around your foot. So I actually got less heel slippage in the Gel Dedicate 7 versus the Gel Resolution 8, even though if you look at them from the heel, they're almost identical back there. Now on the midsole teardown, you'll see that the Gel Dedicate 7 and Gel Resolution 8 have just about the same heel height and heel to toe drop. The big difference comes in the actual foam that's used. In the Gel Dedicate 7, it's a little bit harder and more unforgiving. And right here under the mid part of your foot where there's this little bit of a plastic shank here, on the Gel Resolution 8, there is no shank there. The shank is actually on the outside of the shoe in the trustic system. So you can actually put more foam under the arch of your foot, which gives you a lot more comfort underneath of your foot in the Gel Resolution 8 versus on the Gel Dedicate 7 where it can feel a little bit hard under that foot. And these differences in the midsole construction aren't just seen in terms of comfort. If you look at its performance, I just could not get the height on the serve test on the Gel Dedicate 7 versus on the Gel Resolution 8. The shoe just does not store as much energy as something like the Gel Resolution 8 does. Now, because these shoes play pretty low to the ground, it's a lot easier to get two shots from lower in the ground. However, because they don't have as much oomph as some shoes that have a little bit more, I'd say, elastic in the midsole, they're not going to bounce up as quickly and with as much elasticity. However, when planting and getting down low for balls, these shoes have a little bit more stability than other shoes, much more expensive. Now, there are a few things you might want to do if you are considering buying the Gel Dedicate 7. Number one, because the midsole foam is a little bit more unforgiving, you might want to invest in some rubberized heel cups or silicone pads for under the ball of your foot. I'm not sponsored by any of these companies, but I will leave my favorites down in the description just to make the shoe a little bit more comfortable for the long run. But the outsole tread on the Gel Dedicate 7 is what I think you have to pay the most attention to, especially because what I said with the upper durability test, these shoes are meant for a very specific player, and that's a player that wants the most grip on a hard court possible. These are meant to be a very tacky type shoe on a hard court. And the reason for all that grip is this really diverse arrow and herringbone pattern. You have these really fat arrows here under the inside or medial part under your big toe, and then you have diverging herringbone lines on the outside. So this shoe is really able to interact with a hard surface, right? Because the rubber here isn't as hard as some other shoes. So it really is able to kind of meld into the hard court, and that's what gives these shoes such good grip. Even for a heavier player running pretty fast, getting down low for shots, I never felt like the shoe was going to buckle or kind of slide out from underneath of me. I actually had more confidence moving in this shoe than some shoes double the price. And what's really interesting about the outsole tread of the Gel Dedicate 7 is the day after I did my first suicide test, it rained really hard here. And I decided to go back out to the courts and try another suicide test. And wouldn't you know it, the times weren't all that different because the Gel Dedicate 7 has such great grip on the hard court, even a wet one. But with all that, you do have to watch out for their durability because on the outsole durability test, Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, about 2 millimeters of damage, which is about double the other Asics shoes that are up higher in the price point range. So even though these shoes will grip very well and they do play excellent, they're also not going to last as long, especially if you play on a grittier hard court. If you play on a smoother hard court, you might actually get a little bit more wear out of these. And so in terms of the fit of the Gel Dedicate 7, they pretty much fit the same foot types as the Gel Resolution 8. The shapes of them are pretty much the same. The only big difference is the Gel Dedicate 7 is much better for lighter players just because the midsole foam is a little bit unforgiving. So if you are a heavier player and want one of these two shoes, probably would go with the Gel Resolution 8, just a little more forgiving. But I think when you look at big picture, the differences in playability between the Gel Dedicate 7 and Gel Resolution 8, the Gel Dedicate 7 is just made for a player that more measures their footwork, whereas in the Gel Resolution 8, it's made for someone who wants to slide and move super aggressive, especially on a hard court. On Gel Dedicate 7, it's made for somebody that really kind of knows where they want to plant their foot and really makes a big priority in how the shoe grips the court and really having confidence under their feet. Whereas a lot of the shoes made these days, specifically the Gel Resolution 8, they're made to really slide in or out of a shot on a hard court, and they're made to be worn kind of almost on the inside or outside. That's why the front of the shoe, the top of the shoe, is made of urethane, because that part of the shoe is made to contact the ground. On the Gel Dedicate 7, made for a little bit more traditional footwork, a little bit more the player that takes those 3 extra shuffle steps versus the player that just slides into the shot. Yeah, honestly, I think for the recreational player, these are 100% a buy. Also, if you just need a spare pair of shoes, these are great to have in your quiver. Even if you're just someone that's playing maybe outdoor volleyball or outdoor basketball, and you play mostly indoors, but just some outdoor play, these are a great shoe to have in your bag just so you don't tear up your indoor hardwood shoes. But I think these actually have a lot of applications. And this is why I'm constantly saying there is no one best shoe out there. There's a best shoe for your foot, and you can kind of see that with these two shoes, the Gel Resolution 8 being better for certain foot types, especially for heavier players and for sliders, the Gel Dedicate 7 being a lot better for lighter players, players that don't want the heel slippage of the Gel Resolution 8, and someone that really wants a more tacky and tactile feel of a hard court. So now that you've got a comparison between the Gel Dedicate 7 and the Gel Resolution 8, if you want to see the deep dive into the Gel Resolution 8, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you in the next video.